Yeah, it seems like I'm there, but I don't understand.
This morning, as I was reading the Boston Globe, there was an interesting story in there about the application for employer identification numbers is skyrocketing. It's kind of off the charts, and the current economic situation is driving people to very, very seriously consider entrepreneurship. The EIN is one of the first steps, one of the first administrative steps that you take if you want to get your own business started. You get a tax ID number and so on. So that was, you know, entrepreneurship is alive and well and increasing. And as we have found out, and we will find out in our conversations, entrepreneurs, you know, older entrepreneurs, whether they're doing it on their own or the multi-generational efforts, they're on the rise, and their success rate is high and documented. So congratulations on being such good company here today.
All right. And so to kick us off, Anita Brereton is our first guest speaker, who she herself has started very successful companies, has also funded many successful companies. So she's been on both sides of this conversation. And she's going to give us a foundation by which we can understand the many different varieties of angel funding, and you listen closely for what kind might work best for you. And so we'll have lots of times for questions as well. So Anita, take it away.
Thank you very much, Danielle. It's nice to be here with everybody today. You guys are my peeps. I started my most recent company at the age of 57. And things are going well. So there's good news there. So a little bit about my background. I've been in high-tech startups all of my career, but never a founder myself until the company that I'm leading at the moment. So I spent most of my career as part of a founding team in startups. Then I segued out of that world and into investing. So I became an angel investor for a period of time, and then migrated into running an angel investment group here in Boston. I led the chapter, the Boston chapter of Golden Seeds for 2 years here in Boston. Also, I've sat on the Angel Capital Association, so looked at angel investing at the national level, and sat on the board of the Mass Ventures, which, as many of you may know, is the state's venture capital arm. So Danielle's asked me to kind of start with giving a kind of overview of the angel world. So it is not necessarily homogenous. The term angel comes from the theater world, and it was originally used to describe individuals that backed theater productions and new productions. So when we think about angel investors, they fall into a number of categories. So the first is the individual angel. So this is somebody who is interested in investing and supporting a startup. They're accredited investors, which means that they meet the rules that the SEC has outlined for being an accredited investor. They invest on their own, not as part of an angel group or syndicate. And they typically invest somewhere between $25,000 and $50,000 to support early stage companies. So next up on the food chain, you have your super angels. So they typically are also accredited investors, except they generally invest in either more companies, they spread a lot more money around, or they spread money around in much bigger chunks. I've seen super angels invest as much as $1 million in a single round of financing. And many times we see that super angels have actually been successful entrepreneurs themselves. So those are the kind of the individual angels. And then we move over to the angel groups. So there are 3 types of angel groups. There are network-based angel groups, fund-based angel groups, and hybrid angel groups. So a network-based angel group is a collection of angels that have come together to look at deals as a group, but they make investment decisions on their own. So for every deal, they decide whether they're in or they're out. A fund-based angel group is a group where everybody has pooled their money, and then the group collectively decides who to invest in. And then, as you might imagine, a hybrid group is a group that is both network, so they have individuals making investments, and they have a fund. Now that fund could be described as a follow-on fund, which means that there's a fund available to put extra money into companies that the network itself has decided they like. So if the network has produced $150,000 to $250,000 worth of investment, then the follow-on fund may put in an extra 100,000. And then in some groups, Golden Seeds being an example of that, they have the network group, and then they have the fund group, and they don't always invest in the same things. So very different types of groups. Then on top of that, you have angel syndicates. So generally, if you're raising money, it's not always possible to raise the money that you need from one group. So all of these groups actively talk to one another and share deals and try and fill the remaining dollars that are needed from other groups. So you see a lot of that. Boston is particularly good at that. So if you're thinking about your funding strategy and you think, okay, well, where do angels fit in this overall landscape? So typically they focus on early stage, and I'm going to circle back to what that actually means. They generally sit alongside grants. So angels are investing at the same time founders are securing grants. They sit alongside crowdfunding platforms, which is another way to secure early stage capital. They often invest with micro VCs, which are VCs that invest in early stages with short amount of money. And sometimes they invest alongside family offices, which will be an investment group that is managing the funds of a particular family. So in the food chain, they generally are the step before more formal institutional investment from VCs and private equity. So theoretically early stage. I think, to be very honest, one of the challenges with the angel community at the moment, and this has been something that's been happening over time, is the definition of early stage is changing. So it is very rare that an angel group is going to look at a PowerPoint deck, you know, and say, yep, we're investing in that. They usually want to see at least market validation, perhaps a prototype or a minimum viable product, or even revenue. It depends on the group. So as you're exploring, you know, who to work with or who you would like to work with, keep that in mind, that, you know, early stage means different things to different people. So before I hand this over, a few things. So some of the things I think you should all know about angel groups. First of all, they all basically follow a similar deal pattern. There's a screening process, then you move, if you make it through that, you move to pitch to the group. If you make it through that, you go to what's called a deep dive, which is when you get to dive into all the nitty-gritty of your company. And if that goes well, then you move into the diligence process. The entire process from, you know, the first screening to getting funding can take anywhere from 8 weeks to 6 months, sometimes longer. And you should be aware, and this is the old angel group leader in me coming out, you have limited time to present at screening and in the presentation. So keep your presentation short. Do not come in thinking that, oh, it doesn't matter, I need to present 40 slides. You won't be allowed to. Angel groups don't sign NDAs, so don't ask them to. It's not unusual for angels to be a member of more than one group. So if you can develop a champion within an angel group and they're a member of another group, that's a nice way to kind of get introduced to a second group. They don't respond to cold calls, and I think Detlef will talk more about this, but many of them do have office hours where you can meet them in a more informal setting. You're not talking to a homogenous group of people, both in terms of risk and experience. And I think, you know, one of the things that I observed as a leader is it's a huge emotional component to individual investment decisions. You know, there's this, many angel investors really need to like the founder and like the business. And then the final thing I'll say is that in Boston in particular, many of the angels in town come from the corporate world. We don't have as many entrepreneurial led or folks that are in these angel groups as perhaps on the West Coast. And so they do tend, the diligence here tends to be a little deeper and into the nitty gritty, and that's okay. You know, they've got the money, it's okay. So those are some of the things that I think are important, and hopefully that's given you a basic overview. So I don't want to say too much more because I don't want to step on Detlef's portion of this. So Danielle, I'll hand it back to you to bring Detlef into the conversation.
Well, thank you so much, Anita. That was a great foundation. So now we can understand the perspectives of the individuals, the groups, and particularly around the process. And so that's a great segue to Detlef, who is going to give us a point of view and some pointers about what do angels look for in that pitch and in those conversations, and what's the best way to present your idea in a way that resonates. So Detlef, please introduce yourself and take it away.
Thank you, Danielle. Detlef Redherr, my name. I spent the last 25 plus years mainly in life science, pharmaceutical manufacturing, and mergers and acquisition. I worked in Germany, where I came from originally, Italy, and the last years here in the US, where I was running in Massachusetts, Nitto Avisha, pharmaceutical manufacturing company. On the sideline, 8+ years with Mass Challenge as judge, more than 8 years with Launchpad Ventures, and I will dive deeper into this. And I'm advisor with Brightwood Capital in New York. There we have $4 billion under management. So let me move towards Launchpad Venture. A lot what Anita said absolutely applies. We are 150 active members. And we are a network-based group. So each of the 150 invests on a regular basis, but is really active in order to support and to help this group. We are founded in 2001 and are the 3rd largest angel investment group here in America. Not only in terms of member, but also in terms of volume. So we invest per year, the last few years, $8 to $10 million per year. And mainly in tech and life science companies, really. We try really, and Anita referred to the strict due diligence process. That's really one of the key parts in Launchpad Venture. We go only into companies where we have a lot of competence within our memberships. Our due diligence really dives very deep at some point. So our applicants should be aware. You could apply on our webpage. It's roughly per year 250 to 300 companies. And then the process is, once a company is accepted, they would participate in what we call a catalyst meeting. We have roughly 8 catalyst meetings per year where you get 5 minutes. It's a 5 minutes pitch, and it's per year 60 to 80 companies that move through these catalyst meetings. And then the next stage is the real meeting, where companies who were accepted in the catalyst meetings move and get 20 minutes to an audience of roughly 120, 140 people divided in 2 meetings. So the 20 minutes is 10 to 15 minutes pitch plus a very intense Q&A. So the companies we are looking for are North England based, have very strong management. That's really one of the features we are looking for, because we believe a strong management with a bad idea still can make something out of it. A great idea with a bad management might not end up anywhere. So at the end of the monthly meeting, when people raise their hands, enough people hands are up, then we move to the deep dive, which in our format is a 2-hour drilling, often over the phone or in the past in person, before we go into a due diligence process where 5 to 8 of our members would participate and would cover all the disciplines till we decide, do we invest or not? How much do we invest? So our sweet spot per company that was finally accepted is 250,000 up to 2 million. 1 million alone as a Launchpad venture happens on a regular basis, and 2 million would be in a syndicate with another angel investment group that would join into our due diligence efforts. So per year, we have around 10, 12 initial investments and then a bunch of follow-up investments in order to come to the total volume of 8 to 10 million, which we invested the last few years per year. Daniel, should I pause there a little bit? Are there any questions in the chat room you want me to relate to? Otherwise, I move forward.
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, thank you so much, because that was great just to get a little inside scoop. And you mentioned how important the 5-minute pitch is. And so for folks who are working on, you know, their dream company and they're pouring heart and soul into it, there's so much more to say than 5 minutes. So what is it that you're looking for specifically in the 5 minutes, and how does a founder really show that they are the strong management team that you'd be willing to invest in, even if the idea itself, you know, might go through some pivots?
So a lot of folks in the angel community refer to the 3 Ps. So there's potential, probability, and period. You want to see a big potential, a big market opportunity that is defendable. Obviously, the strong management has to know their market, has to know their stuff, no doubt about this. But it should be defendable. It should not be something your neighbor could copy tomorrow, or one of the big guys, Google, Apple, or so, could get in a heartbeat and then beat you faster than you can imagine. The probability to succeed is the second P we often refer to, and that's subjective. That's our view to say, yes, they have the toolbox, they have strong management, they can defend their market, they might have patents or others. And then the period to succeed, because at the end of the day, we want to see an exit, right? So we don't like, as Launchpad Venture, to invest in capital intensive businesses, because we feel between our early stage seed or A round and the exit, there shouldn't be much more than 10 million in total. Otherwise, we as early stage angels will be diluted like a lot. We don't like this. So if it's a very, very capital intensive business, we might pass on it because we don't feel it's a good fit. Daniel, any further question or comment? Technology.
Detlef, I have one question.
Yeah, sure.
As your investment, you make a decision that you're going to put dollars into a company. Are you involved in any other way after that, other than following your money and seeing what the results are? Are there, I mean, do you typically take a seat on the board? Are you involved in the management of the company, you know, in any kind of meaningful way?
Yeah, good question. The answer is yes, yes, yes. I wouldn't call it the management of the company. And Tim, you might want to come back because you have years and years experience with Launchpad Venture. To what extent Launchpad helped on the board or outside of the board, or you could tap into expertise. But based on the fact that we like board seats, but it's a question of, do we play a major role in a 1 million raise? Then we probably would require a board seat. Do we play a minor role in a 3 million round? Then it's probably less likely that we will get a board seat. But we try to get one, or at least a board observer role. By the way, the companies that come to us, like 5 years ago, they were in the $2.5 to $4 million pre-money evaluation. Today, the last 18 months, we see this notching up higher. And so the companies that come to us come often $3 to $8 million pre-money evaluation. So that was one of the reasons why we as a venture group, Launchpad Venture, moved into slightly earlier stage companies in order to get back to our original pre-money evaluation, where we feel that we can add competence. Coming to the competence, 150 active members, we have a good portion, a good share of entrepreneurs, but we have also the corporate guys, as I'm a previous corporate individual. So I believe we have a good mix, and that's why some of the startups really like our competence, like our advice, because of a strong background of a large group with different industry verticals.
So actually, I'd like to pause there because yes, we've been talking now about the structure of angel investing and the amount of like the size of the investments and so forth. But I love that you brought in the industry expertise and the mentorship and thought leadership, or thought partnership, I should say. So I think it's a great time now to introduce Tim, who has been through this process as an entrepreneur, raised a ton of money, and had grew a very successful company. So Tim, say hi to the group and share with us a little bit about your journey working with angels at the very beginning, and what did that look like over the long term as well as you grew your company?
Yeah, hi, I'm Tim Erickson. I'm the founder and now former CEO of Zagster, which was a bike sharing company based in Boston. We grew the company over a 13-year period to over 250 bike share locations focused on small to medium-sized cities like Rochester, New York, and Albuquerque, New Mexico, and universities like Yale University, Princeton, and other large campuses around the country. So over my 13-year journey, we raised over $40 million in a mixture of venture capital and angel funding. And then most recently in May of 2020, we exited the company during the pandemic, which was a very interesting process. But you know, I think in the early days of Zagster, angel groups were extremely important to the success of us being able to get off the ground. When I started Zagster in 2007, there wasn't a single bike share program in all of the US, and now in pretty much every major city like Boston, you see programs like Hubway and City Bike in New York. So angels at the time were critical to helping us get off the ground, and so we had the metrics, and they're able to show a lot more data to the later stage investors. So we took money from individual angels, super angels, angel groups like Launchpad in Boston, and you know, looking back over the 13 years, I think the angel investors were some of the most valuable assets to our business. So little overview, and I think we have some more details to go into on the panel session.
And if there's an interval for a few more,
so
Danielle, I'm wondering if I might just take a second to introduce and thank another participant, Patricia Chadwick, who's a colleague of mine on the Encore Boston network, and who indeed teed up Anita's participation in this program today. So thank you, Patricia. And Patricia's also herself a member of Golden Seeds, and I hope will be joining me in one of the breakout rooms where people can ask more specific questions. But if we're going to ask questions of the speakers right now, I wanted to get back to Anita and ask her to talk about changing hats or seats, if you will, and being invested in, just the way as a segue to Tim's experience. What did it feel like, Anita, to run or be the director of the Golden Seeds and then be seeking funding for your first founder's experience?
Yeah, so so it happened in two parts. So my first trip over to the other side after being in the angel community was when I was pulled into running as an interim CEO one of our portfolio companies. It was a company called Fashion Plates. I sat on the board with two VC investors who decided that they weren't happy with where things were going, and it was a case of eeny, meeny, miny, oh, Mo, you're it. You have to go in. So I went in on initially for a short-term 8-week assignment. The first week I was there, I had to pitch both VCs on giving us money to keep the company going, and then I had to pitch Golden Seeds and other firms to raise more money. And I will say, when you move to the other side of the table, it's like they've never met you before. You know, they certainly didn't cut me any slack, that's for sure. So it was very interesting. And, but, you know, I'm very grateful for having had the experience on the angel side, because I knew how to prepare. I knew how to do a pitch deck. I understood the process. And so that stood me in good stead. But yeah, once you go over to the other side, it's like, you know, you might as well be a complete stranger when you are standing up and pitching. That was my experience.
So I'm delighted to hear that, Tim, you mentioned that it was working with angels that, you know, when you were funding for bike sharing programs, it wasn't like bike sharing was a given, right? So there was a lot of relationship building and trust, I imagine, or getting into, you know, more aspirational conversations about what's possible, to Detlef's point about potential. So I'd love to ask all of our panelists, and Patricia, please chime in, for founders who, you know, are wrestling with an idea that feels really new, what's the best approach for them to, you know, for founders to find the right angel to be on this journey with them and take a chance? How do you suss out who'd be willing to take that kind of a risk? How do you find angels that are in your field that might understand what that potential looks like? What's the best way to do that matchmaking process? So, so Anita, let's start with you.
Okay, if you have a brand new idea, I think before you approach any angel, you need some sort of validation of that idea. You know, you just, like I said before, you know, just trying to make headway with, here's an idea, isn't it exciting, is really difficult and rarely results in a good outcome, unless you are a serial entrepreneur that has exited very successfully once before, and then people are willing to take a ride with you. So I think if you have an idea, as much market validation as you can do before you approach angels is really important. And then you have to look for who might be somebody or a group that would invest in you. And the first place to start is look at all the angel group websites, because they tell you, we invest in this, but we don't invest in that. And then within that community, you need to look for people that have some expertise in the area you're in. They may not, obviously, if your idea is a bright, shiny new one and it's never been done before, you're not going to find somebody that's got that expertise. But if it's a travel idea, find somebody in the travel business. When I was at Golden Seeds, there's a company in town called Group Eyes, and I met the founder. It's a travel business. I met the founder at, you know, an event like this. And he didn't fit the female-led requirement at the time for Golden Seeds. But I introduced him to somebody that I knew in the ecosystem who was a super angel that had successfully exited a travel business. And that person then became his first serious investor.
So Tim, is that how you then were able to get folks on board with the bike sharing? How did you find angels who were familiar with the field, or what was how did you win them over?
Yeah, I actually don't think anybody was in the transportation field for the most part on the angel side. I think, you know, we were lucky enough that a lot of angels rode bikes on a personal level for many different reasons and in many different groups. And so I think just naturally had an affinity towards what we were trying to build because they believed in the vision. And, you know, I think that's one of the most important things when looking for angel investors, like the ones that end up investing. And obviously you have to have, you know, a business model that's believable and, you know, a good market and all of that, but really getting people to see your passion for what you're building and why it's important to you and why it's an important problem to be solved. I think that's the key part to clicking on an emotional level with angels. And at the end of the day, it's still a business decision and you have to check all those other boxes. But, you know, I think angels can have tons of deals that they could put money into, and I think tends to gravitate more towards things that they like or have a personal interest in, or you know, really like how the CEO is thinking or the founding team is thinking about it.
So Detlef, with this balance between the business model and the business opportunity and this emotional buy-in, right, this aspirational view, when's the right time for that one needs to have? Is it a small pilot with a handful of customers with some, you know, testimonials? Is it data, you know, metrics like that are much stronger than that? Like, what's the right moment to make that first impression?
Hey, Detlef, you're on mute.
Okay, sorry for that. If it's a product or
Detlef, you're still
company,
on. There you go. Okay.
then we would like to have some small sales, ideally, but at least a customer validation, maybe an unpaid pilot of a customer, or a key opinion leader. Let's say it's medical devices. If you go into the entire medical field, obviously you might have an approval process, 501k for medical devices, or a marketing approval for drugs. That's obviously a different ball game compared with a tech game. But long story short, we like if people get some money elsewhere, for friends, family, grants, to show some progress before they come to us. This progress includes some validation that their idea is not dumb, that this idea is good and holds water. And then, yeah, then don't ask too much money, but also don't ask too little money, because credibility in this game is a key factor. If you are not credible because you say with $500,000 I get up to an IPO, that doesn't sound good. But on the other hand, in today's world, it's probably difficult to raise money for a 24-month run rate to keep your 24 months above water. So most of the companies that come to us ask money for a 12-month run rate, in some cases 18 months, but 12 plus minus a little bit is very common.
Danielle, Pat Chadwick from Golden. There's just a comment that I would also add in terms of when to approach. We've had an awful lot of conversations in what we call our office hours, which is at the very, very earliest stage that Anita had mentioned in terms of the conversations. And sometimes the ideas are really germinating, they're very early on. And so that's step one. And we might then revisit that entrepreneur 12 or 18 months later. We might stay in touch. We might connect them with other people. So we often start a relationship through the office hour process in infancy, and then it'll move through and become more, as the business idea develops and the support develops, the relationship can go on. So sometimes by the time someone actually presents to us in our forum, we may have been speaking to them for up to 2 years, depending upon how that started. So it can, often the first dialogue is very preliminary.
Wow.
Danielle, I would like to pick up one question that was in the
So
chat.
I'm loving that. Yeah, go ahead.
It might be of interest for the entire audience here. So the question was, what type of exit do we prefer, strategic versus IPO? IPO doesn't happen as an exit for an angel group normally. It's really a rare exception. So we like, you know, the period was one of the 3 Ps. Obviously, we like an exit within the next 5 years or so. But please remember, Tim just said he founded Dexter 13 years ago. So you have to have the patience to go with that. And I personally invested since the first round Launchpad Venture participated. So we normally exit as a Launchpad Venture to either a strategic or to a venture capital. That's in most of the cases. An IPO, I don't believe in the 19 years existence of Launchpad Venture ever happened, but I'm not 100% sure. Maybe, wasn't there Easy Cater? So that answers the question. Strategic or a venture group, these are for us the most likely exit scenarios. And I hand back to you.
Yeah, no, that's great, because actually it leads into my follow-up question, which is, what can founders expect from a long-term relationship with their angels? So Pat and Patricia, thank you for saying that, meet angels as early as you can in the office hours, start to develop that trust, or at least the angels can start to see how you're thinking and pivoting and nuancing your idea. And then once you do get through these different stage gates, and now you are funded by, with an angel, either an individual or a group, what can you then expect from a longer term relationship? So what is your responsibility or role to nurture that relationship going forward? What kind of information do you continuously provide? What kind of advice do you take? What are the expectations of making that a successful long-term relationship?
So I'll start with that one. So first of all, as entrepreneurs, you have to never lose sight of the fact that you are responsible for using the money that you have been given wisely. And that is, people have invested their personal money in you. So, so from my perspective, we have a set format for communicating with all of our investors. We communicate every single quarter, the good, the bad, the ugly, and updated finances. And we've never deviated from that. We're very committed to that. We do not have angels on our board, but we still make all of the information about the company available to the angels. In terms of what you can expect from angels, particularly in an angel group setting, first and foremost, follow on capital. If you do a good job of keeping your angel group apprised of your progress and, honestly, not promotionally. That's the worst mistake people make, is writing that update that's all, stars and rainbows, and then something goes wrong and people feel blindsided. It's much better to be honest in your communications. Then you can expect to see follow-on capital. In my experience, a lot of the angel groups promise introductions, and that has, for us, certainly in my 2 experiences of raising money, has not panned out. I found that VCs were much better at making introductions for me. But having said that, the expertise that's resident within angel groups, one of the great things is that sitting in these groups are people with expertise in all different fields and functions. And so we tap them for, super advisors. There's a person in Launchpad I go to every time I have, a conundrum around pricing strategy. There's somebody else I go to in Golden Seeds around sales strategy. So it's really helpful to have this big community to access.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So Tim, share with us your experience with your angels. Oh, sorry.
So I would like to add to what Anita just said, first, second, everything she said, but the emphasis is the communication is really to a large extent depends on the startup company, what they offer in terms of communication. So at Launchpad Venture, what we see from the majority, but not all of them, are the quarterly reports. We see them to come to our quarterly meetings. So these are meetings where companies we are invested in give us updates in person or inform us about follow-on rounds. But it's up to them to accept this invitation. It's up to them to send up a quarterly report. They don't have a formal obligation. We cannot beat them up if they don't want to, or if they send us only 2 lines. Some of them send very detailed information and others not. To that extent, it's welcome, but depends on a large extent on the startup company.
And echoing what everybody said, I think you kind of get what you put into it. Meaning as an entrepreneur, there's a ton of knowledge within these angel groups, and because maybe not individual investors may not have put a ton of money individually into each of the company, they may not be as active at reaching out to the companies for information or offering for help. And so I think it really becomes on the entrepreneur to be able to manage those relationships, spend time with those investors, and build those relationships over years, even if they haven't invested in your company yet, so that when you need something, you know who to go to and who to ask for, what to ask for, and get more out of that group. So I think it's important to build that up. My quick story is I founded Zagster right after graduating college. And I was very naive, and I thought if you had a good idea, you could pick up the phone and people would invest in a good idea, and quickly found out the hard way that that's not the case. And we knew BikeShare was going to come to the US, but didn't know how we were going to be involved, and so bootstrapped the company by actually blogging about BikeShare in English, because all the information was coming from Europe and Asia in different languages. And that built up an interest group from universities and cities reaching out to us, and we were able to turn that into some small consulting gigs and everything to get the company started before we were ultimately able to get to our goal. And so I think we talked a little bit earlier about finding ways to prove market traction. This is the way we were able to do that. And so I think I pitched the Launchpad Angel Group maybe 2 years before they ended up ultimately putting in money into the company, because at first we weren't ready for it, but over time and through various updates and communications and building relationships with angels, a few years later, we were at the point where it made sense for them to invest. So it was definitely a long game, and investing in those relationships is key.
Hey, Tim, I have a question. You had the benefit of going through an incubator, Techstars. Did you raise any angel money? I don't recall, but did you raise angel money before you did Techstars or after?
So we raised a very little amount of angel money before we went through the Techstars program. So we were based in Philadelphia at the time where I went to school. We had raised, what I would call more of a friends and family round, about 150K before going into Techstars, and then used the Techstars accelerator to help us really accelerate our sales and our go-to-market and our developing our strategy. And coming out of that program by the end of 2012, we were able to raise a $1 million seed round, and I'd say about 40% of that capital came from angels, and the others came from smaller early stage VCs that put in a couple $100,000 apiece.
I just wanted to raise it because that is also, that's a pathway to gaining the knowledge that you need to present some cogent program to angel investors. So just for the people who are listening, if there are opportunities, and look for the opportunities to become involved in these incubator programs, They can be very, very helpful in putting together the thinking and the structure that you need to actually approach angels. You know, when you go to family and friends and family, you convince them on the basis of, hey, do it for me. And if you use that methodology with angels or any investors along that spectrum, it's not going to work. So, you know, for friends and family, do it for me is okay. But after that, you really need to acquire some skills in structuring what you want to do and then preparing the correct message. So anyway, and the reason I raised the question is Tim did that successfully. And I think that I think it was advantageous then to have gone through Techstars.
For sure. I think we had a lot of the pieces there in the business. We still had a lot to learn, you know, coming out of Techstars. Looking back, that was 8 years ago. But, you know, at the time, for the stage we were at, we had a lot of the pieces in place, and Techstars really helped us put those pieces together and present it in a way that was received well by angel investors. And then, you know, also the accelerators help accelerate your access to various angel groups and individual angels and mentors. So, you know, things like outside of Techstars, like Mass Challenge and others in the Boston area are really helpful if you're just starting out building your network.
And I'll put a plug in for agency too. So we are a network of founders of every age focused on the aging journey. And so we're super excited to help our founders with those strategic introductions, either to potential pilot customers to do that validation that you were describing earlier on, as well as potential investors and other corporate collaborators. As you mentioned, like who believes in your product? If you get the attention of large corporates that could potentially sign up to be channel partners, I imagine that would be quite attractive to an angel funder as well. So I apologize, I jumped off because my internet got really unstable there. So, apologies for the continuity break, but please, for everyone, put your questions into the chat. We're gonna head to breakout rooms in a couple of minutes, but I just wanna make sure that we've covered all of your questions before we do that.
And I'll make an unpaid endorsement of agency as one of the founding companies in agency. And Danielle is a magic rainmaker in her own right of font of introductions and strategic connections. So it's one of the pieces of advice that we as a group, Founders Over 55, give to our members and to people who are interested in you know, how to jump in to entrepreneurship at any age is leverage your network and grow your network. And being part of an accelerator or an incubator is a way to meet people who can become your customers, your strategic partners, channels, and sometimes investors. So it's not just the VC world, as we all know. And angels is a good way to expand your thinking, because a lot of people like Patricia and others, Detlef, they're entrepreneurs, they're business people, but they're also part of angel groups. So people in your own network probably know someone who's an angel investor and maybe even are themselves. And Pat put up information about office hours. I was curious if that was a normal and regular procedure for all angel funds, or if Golden Seeds was unusual in having those kind of early and open office hours for hearing from entrepreneurs in very early stage. Patricia, maybe you can answer that, or Anita.
Well, I started the office hours when I was at Golden Seeds and leading the chapter. And at the time I was taking a page out of the venture book. So some of the VCs in town were running office hours. Since then, I don't think it's the norm for all groups, but I do think other groups are doing it. I don't know, Patricia, do you know if other groups are doing office hours like Golden Seeds?
I don't. Launchpad, I don't know if Launchpad is doing that or not. So I don't know, but we do it.
And who comes to the office hours, and how productive are they, would you say, for the angel
Generally, it's going to be people who we have come in contact with. Either they have reached out to us and one of our investors might, sort of listen to them on a one-on-one pitch and say, maybe this would be good for you to talk further. It could be that we would have been to some accelerator meeting, that we've met people at. There's all sorts of activity, as we know, that goes on in this landscape. And it could be somebody who one of the angel investment, Golden Seed members met. So it comes in a variety of ways. And as I said, very often it's pretty preliminary, commonly it's pretty preliminary. But it might be the beginning of this relationship where we do make some connections, or we do give them some advice to do some things and say, then why don't you come back and talk to us after you've done some of these things. So it really sort of can start the journey or the relationship.
Great.
So I'm looking at the chat also, and I think there's a lot of questions around how much of your company do you give away for the benefit of having a relationship with angels, or being part of these incubators that do take a stake in your company? And how should a founder be thinking about that at the early stage, and then, as their company grows in terms of, equity share and so forth? And I'll throw that out to the group. So if any of our speakers.
Okay, I'll start. So it's really a bit of an art and a science. It really, it comes down to what stage you're at is going to dictate your valuation. And the valuation comes from a number of places. It comes from kind of a pie in the sky. You see entrepreneurs that I've met them that think they're worth, I've met somebody that thought they were worth $35 million and they hadn't started their company yet. But most are more realistic. But the way to look at it is to look at what companies like yours have been valued at. So, that kind of gives you a rough idea for valuation, how far along you are with the product. So the further you can get without taking money, the higher your valuation, the less dilution. The other piece is that in the early days, instead of raising a priced round and fixing a valuation for the company, you can take money in on a convertible note, which is what we've done with this company. And so all of the money that we have taken in to date has been on a convertible note, so that we didn't have to put a stake in the ground too early for the company. So, I mean, you have to do what you have to do for the business. And, the thing that's important to remember is this is not a you against the investor, because a successful relationship is one where you both get what you need. So the investor does not want you to be demotivated because you have such a little share of the company. They need you as motivated as you can possibly be. And at the same time, you don't want your valuation to be unnaturally high, because when you have to raise the next round of money, you're going to need to justify why you were at the valuation you are and show how you've now earned a higher valuation to prevent future dilution. So it's very much, it should be a congenial dance, is the best way I can describe it.
And expanding upon that, I think there's a question about how much the accelerators take. It depends on the accelerator. Back in 2012, Techstars took 6% of the company in common shares, not as preferred shares. I think that might have changed over time. Others like Mass Challenge is nonprofit. I don't think they take anything from there. Yeah. So it sort of depends on which one you go through. My general sense on valuations is, I think it's, obviously you want to get the best valuation that's fair for the company, but at the end of the day, I would take a lower valuation from people I really want to work with than the other way around. I think the right people around the table is more important than the valuation, and the right investor can make a huge difference in being able to get to that next stage, and then getting even higher valuation at the next stage. And so, I'd just rather take a lower valuation for people who can really help.
And Detlef, looks like you wanted to chime in on that one.
Right. So, Launchpad Venture likes companies where we can have a 25% share, which is not small, but to put $1 million in a company and then receive in return a 25% share plus minus 5, that would represent a large portion of our investments. Sometimes evaluations are emotional or are a little bit twisted. Sometimes somebody else has put earlier money in the way who might not be too familiar with this business or with evaluation. And then the entrepreneur has a number they put their head on, but the number is really not a good number, it's not representative, or it was a high net worth individual or a state agency or who knows what. And then it might get a little bit more difficult. Sometimes the cap table is messed up with previous merger or other type of situation, but that's special and probably not for today. But coming back, our first indication is, and we are pretty open and frank about this, to say, look, we don't aim for a 10% share.
Okay. And what about just that initial seed money? So let's go all the way back to the beginning. So there's some founders on the call who just are looking for that 50,000 to get started, just some early run rate to prove out their idea, or anything maybe less than 100. Strings attached on that money. Is that something that that the folks on the call are interested in participating in, or are you really just looking for like the $1 million investments that are going to get you, those bigger?
Yeah, it's probably more than for Anita at the very beginning. She had hybrids, she had individuals, and then the fund type of situation, and the networks. It's probably more than for 1-2 folks, and there are tons of them in the Boston area who said, okay, I put 25 in or 50 in, but and they have know-how to do some due diligence that meets their needs. But it would not be an angel investment group like Launchpad. I don't remember that anybody came to us the last few years who wanted only 200,000.
Okay.
So,
But Detlef,
yeah.
doesn't Launchpad have that, what is it, New Founders Group? Don't they?
Yeah, we have a...
That's like a $50,000 investment.
We have a sidecar. So the idea is to get more diversification, because as everybody knows, a high share of all startups will disappear. So you try to mitigate this risk by investing in more companies. So just last year, a couple of people in Launchpad founded as we call it sidecar. You put 25,000 per year in, commit over 3 years, and this will be managed like a fund. And they invest in $10,000 to $25,000 tranches, sometimes in the same company Launchpad did. And now coming back to Anita, since then you can call us now hybrids, because
yeah,
we are 90% network based, but now we have this little fund there running around. But coming back, I understood Daniela's question. If out of the 55 plus club, somebody would look for $50,000 to $100,000, then probably Launchpad would not be the right partner at this point.
Okay, so well, first of all, thank you to all of our guest speakers for sharing your wisdom and your experiences. We are going to go to breakout rooms now so that folks can introduce themselves to one another. We will have one of the speakers in each of the rooms, and we'll just disperse you guys just randomly. It'll be a Zoom roulette. And if you want to switch rooms, just send a note in the chat. But just before we go, mark your calendars for September 30th. We'll be joined by Debbie Kleiman, who runs the Arthur M. Blank Center for Entrepreneurship at Babson College. And she's just written a book that's doing amazingly well called First Pitch. And it's all about how to package up your pitch in a way that will resonate with potential investors. And so we'll talk a lot more detail. We'll take everything that we've learned today and really start to practice it and put it into those 5-minute power sessions, power pitches. So so with that,
And
I do
Danielle,
want to say,
before
yeah,
you press the breakout button,
yeah.
or before Claudia does, yeah, can I just ask, because we are planning a regular series of programs for the fall and beyond, and we want to be very responsive. I've seen a few questions pop up in the chat that we haven't even been able to start answering today. And I think the pitch program in September 30th is going to be one that a lot of people are interested in. But can you take a minute, if you're here now and heading out to a breakout session before you leave the group today, to just share with us in the chat box any topics you would like us to cover in future meetings that you would personally find interesting, because we want to be able to collect all those, and if there's a critical mass of interest in a particular topic, we'll be there for you. And we'll be able to pull together, as we did today, some amazing contributors and speakers for a great discussion that will leave everybody better informed about the topic they're interested in. So thanks, just wanted to mention that before we broke up.
No, thank you for that, Mary. And this is an organic group. Like, we're all in this together. It's volunteer led. So I'm already seeing some great ideas in the chat. For those of you who are watching the chat and you have a particular expertise or point of view about some of these topics, we invite you to join our steering committee planning group. So if you want to have a role in curating speakers for any one of these topics, if you have a superpower that you want to use to help the group, particularly we're looking for folks who are interested in doing marketing and communication so we can get the great word out about the events. If you're interested in doing some membership coordination and communication, we would love that too, because our membership is growing, especially now that we're doing this online. And if there's any particular thing that you'd like us to work on together, by all means, share it and raise your hand to own it too. So, okay, perfect. All right, so we're going to now just go into 3 different rooms. And again, if you want to switch rooms, just send a note in the chat and we'll try to get you over to different rooms. So Mary and Anita will head off into one room, and Jerry and Detlef will head off into another room, and Tim, you and I will head off into a third room. So it'll take a few seconds. Your screen will go black. You'll get dispersed into your room, and then right before 4:30, we'll come back and share any learnings or any ideas that came out. All right, your breakouts, everybody. Get a chance to meet new people?
Sure, that's a good idea.
Good.
So we were talking about a specific question that we have over here. So I'll let you know. Could you please repeat the question for us?
Yeah, I'm Professor Avi Seidman. I worked with you, Danielle, with Dr. Ray Dorsey last year, remember? Yeah. Yeah, and I was recruited to Boston University. I got a senior position here.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I'm happy to be closer, across the river.
Yeah.
And we're dealing with a lot of students and alumni ideas that want to push concepts and digital technology supporting aging in place and third generation, third age, and so on. And I was wondering, knowing your activities, Danielle, how we can get the agency involved. Any thoughts about it?
Well, first of all, we would be delighted to collaborate with you again. So just for everyone's benefit, so at agency, we have 4 key pillars to our collective. First is co-working space at the Cambridge Innovation Center. So for those of you, particularly if you're a solopreneur and you want to have a community, or if you're a larger company and you want to be among other innovators, the CIC is returning to work. There's amazing safety measures in place, but the idea is to be among a community of fellow founders to really move you forward and help you with a lot of the connections that you need. Our second pillar is convening, which are events, and that's how we met, Professor here. So agency hosted the D-Health Summit, with the University of Rochester last year, and it was a national summit. So we had hundreds of people come to the CIC and share best practices and learn from one another. So events like we're hosting right here with Founders Over 55 as well. So one of the tips that I want to share with everyone is that for those of you who are trying to establish your credibility as a founder, get yourself on stage as a thought leader in your field. Like you bring tremendous expertise, and get yourself on a panel discussion and workshops, lead workshops in your field to really help create that sense of trust. And we're an agency here to help you create events around that. Our third pillar is connections. So we have concierge connections where we help you meet the next person you need to meet in order to achieve your milestones. And a lot of that's happening right here on this call. And all of it leads to our fourth and most important pillar, which is commercialize. We want to help you have this idea, turn that idea into a product or service, have that product or service be the bedrock for a company that can grow and be sustainable and make money, so that you can get more of those products and services into the hands of consumers who need them. So that's the long setup to answer your question, which is, how to engage with students and universities. There's so many ways. We've got entrepreneurs who are looking for interns to bring in solve a particular or help on a particular project, let's say. There's a lot of opportunities for pilot testing. We'd also love to do reverse mentorship, pair folks who have skill sets and what they're building with skills that the students might bring to the table. There might be opportunities to do pilot testing with user groups and so forth. So there's lots of ways that we could work together, as well as like hackathons and ideathons. Like, let's just get right at the beginning of the pipeline for generating great ideas, as well as helping to build teams to take those ideas forward.
Thank you. I took note and we'll follow up.
Awesome.
No, I'm excited. Thank you.
Yes. And by all means, I'll put my email in the chat for anybody who wants to follow up. Let me just get to everyone here. We encourage you to visit the agency website. I'll put that in here, com/agency to get involved. I'll also put the website specifically to Founders Over 55. By all means, add your name to our list if you're not on our list already. And let me put that in there. Let me see, did that get in there?
Alrighty.
And that's where we'll put, we'll advertise any of our upcoming events as well. And feel free to reach out to me directly as well at duplin@cic.com. So,
put information on the chat already, or it will come?
Did it get out there? I don't know if it hit return. Let's see.
Yeah, I see it, yeah.
Okay. All right. So Mary and Jerry, before we say goodbye, any closing thoughts from your breakout groups?
First, thank you, Anita, who did a great job of answering questions in our small group. We had a variety of backgrounds represented, of people who were in the midst of launching, looking for second or third serial entrepreneur opportunities. And thank you, Danielle, for sharing the URLs for people who were interested in joining the Founders Over 55. And I am happy to share my email as well in the chat and to hear directly from anyone. So I think there were a lot of very specific questions about the funding and the stages of funding, and how also to get in touch with and get in front of angel funders or any funders in the middle of the COVID. And Anita kindly pointed out that there's an opportunity here for older entrepreneurs, and maybe an advantage in Zoom meetings and in really heavily using networking and using organizations like this one to get introductions. Anita, do you want to add anything to that little summary? Unmute.
Wait.
And Anita, you're still muted.
Okay.
There we go. Yeah.
Are we good? Yeah. So I
Yeah.
think one of the challenges is just getting the top of the thread, right? So that you can pull on it to find the connections. So I would look at events like this. I would look at the Capital Network, anywhere where angels are making an appearance, and try and reach out and connect through those events, or find people in your LinkedIn network that can make an introduction for you. It's just going to take, office hours, I think, are still going on at Golden Seed. So if you're a woman, I would very much encourage you to sign up for office hours. You don't have to have a pitch. You don't have to have anything. It's just a time to have an informal conversation with somebody in an angel group about where you are, where you're going, and whether you're a fit for the group. And I would look for more of those opportunities. And I think, Danielle, I think that you can talk to this better than me. The CIC creates all sorts of opportunities to meet angel investors.
Indeed. And the Thursday gathering at Venture Cafe is an awesome opportunity to do that as well. There's many times that that folks are just running free office hour sessions from 3 to 5 p.m. every Thursday, and check out their, they have particular expertise in certain areas, so absolutely take advantage of that as well on the Venture Cafe site. So Jerry, any thoughts on your breakout group?
Yeah, we launched 3 companies, and whoever wasn't in our room, I'm sorry you missed it. We had actually, it was an interesting session because we focused in on an idea that one of the participants had. We sort of discussed what obstacles he was facing, and we had a conversation about how we might be able to move forward. So it was kind of a working session more than an overview of what kind of funding we could put together.
Nice. Nice. Well, in our group, Chris Harris is looking to invest or meet folks very early in their journey, pre-seed. So Chris, do you want to do a quick, just a quick overview of what you're looking for and how folks can reach out to you?
Sure. I put my email in the chat. We're looking at seeds and pre-seeds. Our background is more device-based, but we see a lot of software companies too. And my background personally is started a company in 1983 called Technical Solutions doing product development. My over 55 company is Atomic Launch. That's once again looking for seeds and pre-seeds. So even if you're just at the ideation stage, we're happy to take a call and just see what's going on.
So Chris, if you could please put your contact information in the chat again, because I'm not sure if the first time it was only in our breakout or if it
Sure.
actually went to everybody.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So I'm sorry that we have to go. We're actually 10 minutes over our time. So I think one thing that we do talk about in our steering committee meetings is how much time to devote to like the panel discussions, and then how much time to devote to the breakout groups. So we're experimenting each time. So we would love to hear from you guys if you would like to have even more time in breakouts. We can get more time to meet one another. So chat stream seems to be locked. Oh, really? I don't, Claudia, I don't know how to help that. Sorry. So do let us know if you'd like another session where we're just mostly doing breakouts, but definitely mark your calendar, 4 p.m. September 30th. We will reconvene with Debbie Kleiman to talk about pitching. And along the way, we're just going to keep scheduling more meetings and build the group and help everybody on their entrepreneurship journey. So thank you to Anita, thank you Detlev and Tim and Patricia, and thank you to Mary and Jerry in building this community. And Claudia, thank you so much at Venture Cafe for hosting us today. And thanks to every single one of you who took your time to be with us today. It's really amazing to see how we can all still get together in these very uncertain and troubling times. And let's all emerge from this COVID chapter stronger, more connected, and quite frankly, more willing to help one another succeed, because that's where the joy comes from. So any last thoughts before we say goodbye?
Thank you to you, Danielle, for holding it all together and being an inspiration.
Well, Venture Cafe, we just want to say thanks. And we really appreciate you, Danielle. We're happy to have founders over 55 and agency part of the family from Venture Cafe. So thank you for joining us today. And thank to our presenters and the panels. We will appreciate you taking our one question survey. Just is one question. I'm gonna put the links on the chat. Also, we will appreciate your feedback so we can improve your experience in our virtual Venture Cafe platform. If you want to continue the conversation or meet with the attendees, we have our global virtual networking open. So there is the link as well, and you can continue the conversation there. Or always keep in mind that you have to sign in into Remo, but everybody can meet over there. And then finally, I would like to invite you for the next session that we will have today. It's about patent strategy with Stephen Hu, and it's gonna start at 5 p.m. So all of you are welcome to join us there. Please find the links in the chat, and well, we will see you next time. Have a great afternoon, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you.
Great, thank you.